Well, let me just move a little bit.
Yeah, here, thanks. Except for me and then one other guy.
I already went through that phase. Although I haven't shaved this week, so. Does that count?
Some more light. Color like you have 56?
Yeah, I think so.
Shave my once. Just shave my legs.
I live with my friends, young kids, and they shave it off. They're like,
I'm just feeling it. I don't have to right now, Steve, I'm hoping. It's nice to be outside.
don't trust mine.
Yeah. I was like, all right, I'll go.
I got a piece of paper. Actually, I got a piece of paper.
Yeah. I'm hoping. It's really nice to meet you. I Twitter. Yes.
Do it all by eye now. I hit my little my button to auto correct my white balance. But I guess since I'm sending this out, we should be all official and stuff, right? Run a little shutter. So I'm telling you all my Emmy Award-winning secrets.
All right, put a piece of white paper up for everybody. Apologize for the size. Don't judge me.
5'6", perfect.
Okay.
What it should be.
You got it there, brother?
Yeah, good.
Okay.
5'7".
So 57 you have?
Right here, 5'8".
You got 57.
Anybody got 5'4"?
Okay, 5'2".
Yeah, 5'2", right? Does it skip 5'2"? I usually paint it, and I got the thing. I can hit the button and dial a little this way, that way.
99% of the time, preset works.
It does. I can't.
I hate to hear that.
I can't do that. I can't do. I know.
And you're outside in any light will be able to accept it.
It's only if you're right there in that 15 minutes of sunset. It's bizarre.
Golden hour or whatever. That's what I see on TV.
But I still I'll take the white balance. I'll take the white balance and then I think I like the more majestic. And run heavy shot.
Top right on like 4-3.
And I got a great
So my family now, they're in the Omaha area, but I'm from the western side of the state, like we're by Colorado. So, yeah, so it's been different. That's where I'm
Yeah, this is a lot of
Yeah, people always it is, like all of Missouri is different. People always ask, like, is there a good grocery shop when I moved to? Yep, still is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the town I grew up in,
more in the city.
it's like 26 of the cities I grew up in.
Yeah,
So,
my town is 3,784, yeah.
nice.
I think the biggest shop is Friday outside. And I was like,
I can't do this
I'm not
anymore.
looking at these anymore.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's all crap. Wyoming is like, my sister lived in Wyoming for a while. It's like the snow, like it's snow.
For years. Then I'm like, oh, it goes below 40, and I'm like, oh,
I used to say I love the season. I'm retired.
I grew up in Florida, so this is I'm still not used to it.
I feel like Florida, you'd never get used to it.
Oh my gosh, every winter I
You're
have.
quite
I
normal
can't get
for-
homesick during winter, I'll tell you that.
You're quite normal for a Florida man.
Now, when I came up in
That
2013,
story's
though, we had
outside.
75 for Christmas here, so that was nice. So that was like home. I was in shorts and flip-flops. But man,
I'm getting older too.
it is.
I love winter.
That's what I said.
Yep. I remember I used to give my parents a hard time because I thought I got robbed. You know, I never got snow, and my parents never traveled much, so I never got to go any places.
Best stories.
The first time with snow, and then it froze under the car, and I'm chipping away like. I'm like, okay, this is enough. I see why we live in Florida.
That's what I'm saying. Like when you're a kid, it's great.
Yeah. Now it's amazing.
Now it's more.
I slip on the ice every
I
year.
would have paid to see snow, right? I would have paid to go to a nice snow resort.
Each year is like, which size?
That I'm okay with.
It's funny. I finally got the spikes for my shoes like this year, but each year before it was like, so what am I going to bruise or break this year by walking out on the ice?
Falling.
And it's always a creation too. I'm always going somewhere important, and I fight it. I'm like already not coordinated, so I don't need ice.
I'll pop my top
I'll
light
say
on
this
too
isn't
when it
bad. I was in
starts.
New York for a little while. It was a little worse up there, so here everybody stays home. Mr. Ramon, how you doing, buddy? Not too bad.
Oh, he's the woolly mammoth.
Growing it out, huh?
There he is, the new guy. He's been here 15 years.
Man, good to see you. How you doing? Good.
Nice to have a proper press conference.
I know, right? Been a while.
Feels like the old days.
I know.
What's that? You know what? We shouldn't have sent it out there. Because it's an hour down there and it's an hour down there.
That's the theory to
I mean, does he have to have it like, does he have to have it right instantly? Or?
He wants to hear it like this.
Oh, okay. So you could record it and then just send it as a file. It don't even delay to him. Well, airplane mode, you won't. Yeah, so the distance you are here, you're going to hear a lot of birds. You're going to hear a lot of.
What about here?
Yeah, it's too far.
You think so?
I don't want to mess up for Darcy.
Yes.
On the flower boxes, what is that? To protect it from the birds, right?
Yeah, probably the bird.
It took me a little bit to figure it out. Oh, dummy.
Temporary holding.
Dummy. Walking with the ear. I haven't done that.
I guess we'll have a full that.
What's that?
I guess we'll have a full that.
Yeah, we'll be faster at it. At least they have their own copy. So should I roll on it or not? My camera. Now, my camera, should I roll on it or not?
I might as well.
Yeah.
Sure the hell
Oh,
not.
okay, okay, got
I don't want to, because
So I'll see.
That's nice, you like, get back to doing more.
I'll let you know.
He could do like it's
a dozen of little ones, yeah. Yeah, they got, we got first generation LED. Those are way better.
So I just talked to her about the board, just setting that up, so.
But,
And the panels, you could just.
yeah, that's, yeah. It's always best to hit it with a little something to soften it. Unless it's super bright and you have to, but soft bright light's better. Right. But it's a good spot. Everything we have are floods.
Oh, yeah, I can light up a whole house in the middle of the night.
Which wasn't as hard as Indiana, like it, but it was probably easier.
All right, Joe, you ready? All right.
Oh, it's gonna be you.
All right, I think we'll be ready, guys. I'm gonna tell them that we're ready.
Oh,
You guys?
yeah.
All right, thank you guys.
Which one of these buttons focuses?
No, I'm from recording. All right.
Everybody want a mic check real quick?
Yeah, you can do one more.
I'm gonna do one for me, but for you do for everybody. Check 1 2. Hello, hello. 1 2. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? All right.
But you have a radio voice.
This could be quite a meditation track with the water.
Yeah.
I hear the rain. I know the rain.
Everybody calm.
I know exactly.
Relax, so.
Be quiet for 10 minutes. We have a nice track to relax to.
Massage music. That is pretty.
Yeah, it's really nice.
I wish I had a better
It's better than
microphone.
the norm
Nice.
of people honking their horns and yelling
Right.
right next to the generator or something.
People. Why do we need? Oh, well, I guess. That is a long walk.
thank you all very much for coming. Appreciate your time. I'm Stacy Flynn.
Getting
Work with
paid.
Rebecca. Okay, Chief, we're going to have you here at the podium, sir.
All right.
And we're going to have, let's do state's attorney on that side and law enforcement on this side because there's fewer state's attorneys. Okay. So for my state's attorney partners, we're going to have you walk past the chief and stand on that side closer to the trees. And for our law enforcement partners, we're going to stand on this side, and then the chief is going to introduce everybody before we get started. Come on, Rick, you're up. Nice try. All right. You guys got a lighting and everything? There's room. Anyone else wants to jump in?
Good. All good?
Yes, sir.
Are you ready?
Yes, sir, we
Okay.
are.
So good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. I am Marcus Jones, Chief of Police here in Montgomery County. With me this afternoon is John McCarthy, Montgomery County State's Attorney, Aisha Brayboy from the Prince George's County State's Attorney. We have Hector Velez, Interim Chief of Police for Prince George's County. Leslie Parsons, he's the Assistant Chief of the Metropolitan Police Department's Investigative Services Bureau, and Rick Ruggieri from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Also with me is Chief Dinesh Patel and Chief Willie Parker Lone from Montgomery County, as well as Chief Ron Smith, who's also here of our Investigative Services Bureau. In the fall of 2020, the Montgomery County Police Department and agencies within the DMV area began noticing a sharp uptick in carjackings. From September 2020 to February 2021, 38 carjackings were reported to the Montgomery County Police Department. Local law enforcement agencies met and determined that the best way to tackle the increased criminal activity was to create a regional carjacking task force. The carjacking task force comprised of detectives from the Metropolitan Police Department, the Prince George's County Police Department, the Montgomery County Police Department, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and various state's attorney's offices. During this task force, investigators identified 4 suspects who committed 8 carjackings throughout the DMV between January and February 2021. Detectives also learned that these same 4 suspects committed 13 commercial and street robberies in the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia. The events that precipitated the identification of these suspects began on February 5th. On February 5th, the suspects committed 3 commercial armed robberies in Southwest DC and Silver Spring, and stole a car in Arlington, committed a Volkswagen carjacking in Alexandria, and committed 2 street robberies at ATMs in Silver Spring. At 6 p.m. on that date, while operating the carjacked Volkswagen from Virginia, the suspects then committed 2 additional armed carjackings in close proximity in Silver Spring. The suspects abandoned one of the stolen vehicles. The other 2 stolen vehicles were involved in multiple police pursuits in Montgomery County and the District of Columbia. After one of the pursuits in D.C., 18-year-old Jeremiah Cox was arrested a short distance away from the abandoned Volkswagen. Both Metropolitan Police and Montgomery County Police detectives interviewed Cox, which resulted in admissions of his involvement in 7 of the robberies. Task force investigators developed 18-year-old Elijah Green Parker and 21-year-old Rashawn Onley of Washington, D.C. as suspects. On February 19th, an Infiniti was carjacked in Silver Spring. Using the carjacked Infiniti, Parker, Onley, and 2 additional suspects committed a second armed carjacking of a BMW in Temple Hills. The Infiniti and BMW left the scene together. returning to Parker's residence in D.C. The Infiniti driver was arrested by MPD and identified as 21-year-old Antonio Miles. The BMW escaped. On February 27th, in coordination with the Arlington County, Virginia Police Department SWAT team, Parker and Only were arrested after a hotel barricade in Virginia. Detectives recovered 3 handguns in their hotel room. Multiple law enforcement agencies subsequently conducted interviews with these 2 suspects. Between January and February of 2021, the following 22 violent felonies have been linked to these 4 suspects. 8 armed carjackings in D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. 8 commercial armed robberies in D.C. and Maryland. 5 daytime armed robberies of ATM proceeds in D.C. and Maryland, and 1 jump-in vehicle theft, which means the vehicle was running with keys inside in Virginia. These arrests are a glimpse of the great work done by the 2021 Regional Carjacking Task Force. Through a collaborative effort, the task force has decreased the number of carjackings and has closed 22 commercial robberies, street robberies, and carjackings within Maryland, D.C., and Virginia. And I just, again, want to take the time to applaud the excellent police work of all of the law enforcement officers involved, from the investigations to also officers who put their lives on the line in some of the pursuits involving these dangerous suspects that terrorize our communities in the D.C. metropolitan, Maryland, Virginia area. So at this time, we'll open up the floor to questions.
Any motives though for these carjackings and robberies? Was it for money? Was it to commit other crimes? Or any of the cars being taken to chop shops or anything like that?
Well, we don't believe, as far as the carjackings, was there a motive to actually take those vehicles to be utilized for financial gain. But clearly we know that the commercial armed robberies and the ATM robberies involved definitely a motive of financial gain. So there was somewhat what we would call a method to the madness, you might say, that said that there was some motivation behind what they were doing.
Did we have people? Did we have people injured during these carjackings that took place?
I will say that we didn't have anybody seriously injured, but there were people whose lives were clearly threatened by these individuals that were involved.
In many of these cases, the suspects are known to law enforcement. They, in some cases, have committed armed carjackings before. What's your message to the judicial system as these individuals now enter that?
Well, it is clear to me, based upon the recent increase in these types of incidents, as we know, this is not something that is only happening here in the Washington metropolitan area. We know, in fact, in law enforcement, this is happening all across the country. But I think it's vitally important for the judicial branch to take this very seriously, because we know that the potential is very high and clear that someone is going to get either seriously hurt or in fact killed in response to these individuals who are committing these offenses. And I think a message needs to be sent to make sure that we eliminate these activities that are occurring in our communities.
In many of the carjackings that have occurred, they're young people. This week in D.C., they've been arrested for 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds. Why do you think they're not even allowed to drive? What do you attribute that to?
Well, I think that's an interesting point, because it is interesting that in the world of the COVID pandemic, some people would say it's due to boredom, right? Some people would think that it could be connected to some video games or just the joy of it. And because we do see those individuals, again, not necessarily doing it for financial gain, that seems to be some sort of a joy ride or a kick. But I would suggest even beyond that even though people think it's just because of people's boredom with COVID, I still think it's them not understanding the seriousness of what they're actually doing and the willingness to go out and again, not only endanger the lives of others, but they're also endangering their own lives for those who really don't know how to drive, haven't been trained to drive, and we've seen some dangerous situations evolve out of that. So I think, again, we must, as a community, understand that there's can be, I think, multiple factors behind the fact that these individuals are, particularly at a young age, don't really understand the magnitude for which they're doing it. But, you know, social media is powerful of information that's getting out there, and I think, again, we have to figure out a way to put an end to it. Yes, sir.
In the series of the case that of the carjacking you investigating, is there any trend you kind of like seeing in the carjacking, or what types of vehicle that being hijacking the most?
You know, there's really not a true trend of specific vehicles. I mean, we did see really sort of your higher luxury brands. But again, remember, we were having anything from a Volkswagen to a BMW, right? That has been seized. I think, again, it's more of an opportunity. These are crimes of opportunity. So when they see situations where individuals, you know, have left themselves vulnerable in many ways, at whether they're at a bank ATM or whether they are at a gas station, they're looking for that opportunity of potential victims. And so that's why we're really saying to the public, everyone must be aware of your surroundings. And anything that is suspicious, we would highly encourage individuals to make sure that they are contacting us, but also, you know, from the standpoint that we don't want anyone to be a victim, and we want people to make sure that they are not leaving themselves in a vulnerable position by leaving their key fob in the car, for example, or your purse while you're actually pumping gas. That would be an example that we want to make sure people are very safe in their environment.
Is there a case, Chief, that really sticks out to you, be it the victim was 85 years old or there was a 3-year-old in the car, anything that really jumps out to you as, wow?
I will, out of this particular case, I will say, I can't say, but I will say just this earlier today, in the Germantown district, we had a vehicle that was basically stolen with a child by 2 suspects. A child was still in the back seat of that particular vehicle, and luckily, from this perspective, the suspects realized the child was in the back seat and actually returned the car to its original location and ended up stealing another car out of the same parking lot. And luckily, we had our officers who were in the area who have captured both of those suspects who are now under arrest. That's an example, right? That again, here we have our children, transporting our children, simply pumping gas, and this is what these individuals will go to this extent in order to commit these types of crimes. That is very disturbing.
Chief, you said between September and February there was a sharp uptick, 38 carjackings. Do you have any comparable data from like the previous year or previous period?
Yes, so I'll give you an example. So this is for Montgomery County. And just to give you a highlight of what I'm talking about. So between September of 2020 to December of 2020, the last quarter of the year, we had 24 carjackings in just that period of time. Prior to that, we had 12 carjackings for the entire year, up to that point. So literally we had 36 carjackings in the year of 2020. In the year of 2019, we had 20 carjackings for the entire year of 2019. And in no month did we have more than 3 carjackings during the month in 2019. So you see where the increase, there's been an incredible increase. And then again in 2021, we have had 16 carjackings since January. So that's where we are in today's environment with this spike.
You announce the arrest, are a majority of those cases solved, or do we still have a lot that are unsolved?
Well, there are still some unsolved cases. We're still working with the task force members. There are still targets that we're still going after. Because we still believe that there are individuals that are out on our streets who are still committing these acts all throughout the DMV. So we are still actively, still have this task force actively working in order to be able to resolve those cases.
Are the remainder, you think there's a connection between the people doing the ones that you're still looking for? Are there connections in those crimes?
We're not sure at this point, but we're looking into that. Okay.
Steve, what role did the task force play in making some of the arrests that you're discussing today?
Today, from today's arrest, is that what I'm hearing?
From what you're talking about today, what role did the task force play in getting these cases resolved, getting these arrests?
Oh, this is all as a result of the task force. So all of those arrests and the investigations, I spoke about those 22 events that occurred and the 22 commercial armed robberies that also occurred. All of those stats that I noted, that is the result of the task force. That's the work that they did in order to be able to help close those cases.
Data shows this is happening more in the pandemic. Why do you think that is emboldening people?
That's an interesting question. I don't know if I have the answer to that. I really don't. I mean, again, there's a lot of things that I think from the pandemic that we've seen. We do know, our violent crimes are up in Montgomery County. I'll let the other chiefs speak for their jurisdiction, but I think that's traditionally has been somewhat consistent. And why is that? I think there's going to be some interesting times that I think even prosecutors might be able to get answers to those questions as they prosecute those cases down the line. They might find what was the motive behind many of these types of incidents that occurred.
Have investigators found these suspects posting to social media, bragging about their carjackings?
Yes, we have, and we've been able to be able to digest that, and really them kind of showing the world what they've done. Again, most times they can't keep it to themselves, right? They've got to figure out a way. They've got to boast, and they've got to really tell the story to somebody. So we have been able to really see them do that on social media. And again, we're keeping our eyes out for those types of messages that are out there.
It seems to me a disconnect from reality if you're going to commit a violent crime and then post about it on your social media account.
To some degree, but it's disturbing because it bothers you when people go to a level to commit such a violent act and then to boast about it, right? I think that's really an issue we've got to look into and address.
Other than the task force, any other procedures or things you guys are doing to try to catch people in the act, so to speak? Or?
Well, I mean, I'll speak for Montgomery County. I don't know if anybody else wants to speak, but I'll just say for Montgomery County, I really do applaud our officers for their vigilance in order to be readily available and in those areas where we've had majority of our carjackings occur, for example, in districts such as Silver Spring and in Bethesda, where we've really put a focus on extra patrols, extra surveillance units in order to be able, and that's how we've been somewhat successful in capturing some of those individuals because of their quick responses when these events happen. So I applaud their efforts because they've helped us to be able to close some of the additional cases that even if the task force had not, we hadn't solved at that point. So thank you all, I appreciate it, and thank you for coming out today, okay? Thank you. Anybody want to say anything? Good? Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay.
You good? Texting